Well, hello everyone. Thank you so much for coming out on this spring day to visit Sojourner Place. My name is Dan McCarthy. I'm with the Episcopal Housing Corporation. On behalf of EHC and Healthcare for the Homeless, I want to welcome you all to Sojourner Place at Oliver. Just a little bit of background about where you are. This is a joint venture between our two organizations, and it produced 70 units of affordable housing, half of which are reserved for people who are exiting homelessness, and we get those referrals from the Mayor's Office of Homeless Services, and half are deeply affordable housing. So, as we like to say, Sojourner Place is ending and preventing homelessness all in one place. We're really thrilled to be able to have this open house for you guys here to celebrate the House America goals, of which I believe we are part. You know, with House America, right, when you measure something, you achieve it. So we set out to measure 70 units, and we achieved it, and the House America goals were also that you guys set out a goal, and with Irene's leadership, we're able to achieve that. So a couple of, it's really great to have this group of people up here with me right now, because they were instrumental in making this all happen. From our friends at the Maryland Department of Housing, when Matt, who was now at HUD, was there, and Acting Secretary Day is here. They were critical in that. And then, of course, the Mayor's Office and the Mayor's Office of Homeless Services was critical in making this happen as well, with financing and support in so many different ways. And the Housing Authority of Baltimore City is here. That Janet's crew was really hugely helpful and allowed us to do some creative things on the financing side. And of course, Alice Kennedy and her support was critical for this as well. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention Janice Miller, who is the head of our, I'm sorry, Janice, who's head of our Continuum of Care, who was a volunteer board of people like myself, and Kevin Lindemood, who you'll hear from in a moment, who are leading and providing community input to end homelessness in our city. So thank you all so much for coming. I also want to mention Amy Klein, who's here, who is both through the Harry and Jeanette Weinberg Foundation, has been a supporter of our work, but also has been a thought leader and really being able to move the city towards making housing rare, brief, and hopefully, ultimately a solution to it. So thank you, Amy, for all that you've done. So with that, I'd like to introduce Kevin Lindemood, my partner here from Healthcare for the Homeless.
Thank you, Dan, and welcome, everybody. There has been a wonderful evolution over the last 40 years of contemporary homelessness, from a housing readiness approach to a housing first approach. Joe Savage knows this quite well, giving people the stability that they need in housing first, and then after that, everything is made far better and more effective. It's important to realize, though, that housing first is not housing only. And in this particular project, thanks to the generosity of the Harry and Jeanette Weinberg Foundation and the creativity of the state of Maryland, we have been able to finance supportive services through this development project by having no permanent construction loan. That helps to make that model of access to housing and access to supportive services so effective. One of the residents of Sojourner Place at Oliver recently said publicly that housing makes all the difference. Another said that having a roof over your head makes you feel human again. And these aren't just sentiments. The data bears this effectiveness out. When people are supported in housing, emergency department visits go down, hospitalizations go down, overall health goes up, public safety costs go down. Housing is healthcare, as we say at Healthcare for the Homeless. And we also say that housing is the solution to homelessness. We've been providing services for decades, and not a single service we provide is effective in ending homelessness without housing in some way, right? But I actually don't think that's entirely true, that housing ends homelessness. Sustainable communities end homelessness, right? And that's reflected by everyone that you will hear today that believes in the power of housing. Collectively, we all create a more sustainable community, because a truly sustainable community would not allow homelessness to exist and persist in the first place. So that's what we are after, creating sustainable communities like Sojourner Place at Oliver, and working to create a more sustainable community for us all. It is my great pleasure to introduce the Director of the Mayor's Office of Homeless Services, Irene Augustin. Hello, Irene.
Good afternoon. I'm Irene Augustin, the Director of the Mayor's Office of Homeless Services. Thank you, Dan and Kevin, for welcoming us here to Sojourner Place. It is a shining example of collaboration and the true definition of what safe, affordable housing can look like here in Baltimore. It is my pleasure to join you today to celebrate our House America achievements, our collective achievements. It takes a community to house our most vulnerable neighbors, and this, all of you here today, is what community looks like. As a community, we not only met, but exceeded our rehousing and housing creation goals in 2022. Yes, clap for that. Homelessness is a crisis situation. It does not define who someone is, but making progress towards an efficient homeless response system ensures that an episode of homelessness is rare, brief, and non-recurring. The strategic investment plan, which centered community engagement and the voices of people with lived experience, served as a roadmap to identify parts of our homeless response system in need for critical investment. This helped us to develop our request for American Rescue Plan Act support, which resulted in Mayor Scott's commitment of over $75 million in ARPA funding and collaborating with Baltimore City's Department of Housing and Community Development on $15.4 million in home art funding. This investment supports Baltimore's ability to make critical, transformative change in the lives of our most vulnerable Baltimoreans. Mayor Scott also understands the importance of setting goals and signed up for House America. In partnership with HUD, USICH, the VA, we as a community set bold goals. Our initial House America goal that we announced in May was to rehouse 1,000 households that were currently experiencing homelessness. When we achieved that goal in September, I challenged the Leadership Committee on Homelessness and Housing to set a new goal, not because these numbers, these achievements, look good on paper, but because each number represents an individual and family experiencing homelessness. Sorry, my paper's stuck together. It represents our youth who has their whole lives ahead of them and should be looking forward to their future, but struggle to keep up in school because they're worried about where they're going to get their next meal or find a safe place to sleep at night. Or one of our veterans that has served our country and should be enjoying civilian life comfortably, but spends their nights sleeping in shelters or in city streets. All Baltimoreans deserve to live in safe, affordable housing. Our neighbors experiencing homelessness are valuable members of our communities, and the onus to support them lies within each one of us. Strong communities support one another. Strong communities understand that everyone goes through ups and downs, but we should be able to help our neighbors because that is what community is all about. Today, we celebrate those people. We celebrate the individuals and families who are working to rebuild their lives. There should be no shame in asking for help. It's the bravest act a person can do. We celebrate the outreach workers, social workers, case managers, and all staff who work with people who are living in a housing crisis. This work is hard and tireless, but we celebrate with our clients as they sign their lease, get their keys, move in, and are reunited with family. And while we celebrate our achievements, we continue to look to work ahead in 2023. It is important to celebrate milestones, but our work is far from over. In addition to increasing the number of people housed and expanding the affordable housing stock, it is critical to develop outcomes that we monitor for our overall progress in seeing a reduction in homelessness in Baltimore City. We will align with United States Interagency Council on Homelessness' goal of reducing homelessness by 25% by 2025. And upon analyzing our rehousing data for the last 14 months and projected resources, the Leadership Committee will work with our continuum of care to announce new rehousing targets and launch a new digital dashboard so that we can track our progress. In the coming weeks, we will roll out new diversion and rapid resolution resources, as well as a centralized affordable housing database. Throughout 2023, the Mayor's Office of Homeless Services will continue to partner with the Department of Housing and Community Development because adding more affordable housing to our communities is the key to housing stability for all. Because people need housing now, we will continue work with our providers at the Continuum of Care, the Housing Authority of Baltimore City, and the VA. I am thankful for the ongoing support of our development and housing agencies because housing ends homelessness. Everyone plays a role in ending homelessness, and we will continue to break down silos and build partnerships with other sectors. In 2023, we will continue to create stronger relationships with hospitals and healthcare, public safety, and the criminal justice system, as well as our business community and any community stakeholder who wants to join us to work towards ending homelessness in Baltimore. I am tremendously proud and honored to be a part of this. Thank you, Mayor Scott, for bringing me to Baltimore and for your support. Thank you to Commissioner Alice Kennedy for your partnership and leadership with the Leadership Committee on Homelessness and Housing. And thank you to all of you from our partners at Baltimore City's Continuum of Care, The Journey Home, our Lived Experience Advisory Committee and Youth Advisory Board, the Leadership Committee on Homelessness and Housing, and to our many partners. While we may not always agree and can sometimes agree to disagree, we remain steadfast in developing solutions and making a difference. Lastly, I would like to say a special thank you to my team at the Mayor's Office of Homeless Services. I may be biased, but I believe I have the hardest working team in the city, and I appreciate their hard work and dedication. Together, we are making positive progress to end homelessness in Baltimore City, and I look forward to continuing this work in 2023. Now, I have the pleasure of introducing our next speaker, Mayor Brandon M. Scott. The achievements we celebrate today are possible because of Mayor Scott's investment. The investment plus his convening of the Leadership Committee highlight Mayor Scott's commitment to homeless services and housing. Thank you, Mayor Scott, for your leadership.
Thank you, Irene, and thank you for your leadership in helping Baltimore to be a leader in this space of helping our residents experiencing homelessness. It is a great day to be here in East Baltimore, as I am every day, especially to be here at Sojourner's place, a place that I got to see go from the bottom up every day as I went to and fro home. But more importantly, to see our neighbors, folks that I saw before the building opened who were saying, I can't wait, I hope I get in. And to see some of them here today and just hear the stories about how this building, this process, this partnership has changed their life. That is what really, really matters when you're talking about doing the work. I'm also extremely excited to be here with my good friend, and I'm going to do you like I do Secretary Buttigieg, Mayor Secretary Day. Because once a mayor, always a mayor. We are so ecstatic to have him here. We are glad that Governor Moore has placed this heavy responsibility, but since he's the mayor, we know state government is going to be a little slow for him, so we'll keep him busy. Always great to be with Matt and our good friends from HUD as well, and of course, our fabulous team that we have here, Irene, who you heard speaking, who's leading the work, Commissioner Kennedy, who is doing some great work here in East Baltimore, but all over, and leader of our Baltimore Housing Authority, Janet Abrams, who is also doing great work. This is like the trifecta right there with these three women. If I go into a meeting and those three are in, I can leave. I don't have to worry about it. No worries. But I am excited to be here with you all to share Baltimore's achievements with our 2022 House America Initiative goals. Broadly speaking, our goal is to make homelessness rare, brief, or a one-time occurrence, and that is why we were more than willing to join other cities across the country in this significant House America effort, and of course for me to compete with my fellow mayors. We were ambitious with our goals and wanted to illustrate our firm commitment on this issue. Last year, we announced, it was very hot when we announced it too, a lofty goal to rehouse 1,000 households experiencing homelessness and add 1,605 affordable housing units to the development pipeline here in Baltimore. We were ambitious, but yet also very intentional. And it was important to me that we hold ourselves accountable in making that commitment. So we aligned our resources, announcing with all the combined money, $90.4 million in the city's short and long-term responses to homelessness. And this included, as you heard, a $15.4 million in home investment partnership program in American Rescue Plan funds awarded by HUD's home program. Thank you very much, sir. And additionally, you heard from Commissioner Kennedy and I last year that we were investing $100 million into housing projects across the city to create more affordable housing. A great deal of work went into our efforts over the past year, and one of the key things that we did was convene the Leadership Committee on Homelessness and Housing. Folks who are represented by fabulous folks in this room who did the work of saying, Baltimore, we can do this, but most importantly for me, as I said to them last week or 2 weeks ago, we can do it together. That we don't have to try to operate in silos as our city often does, but we can work together in partnership with organizations to work on ending homelessness in our city. This committee includes homeless services and housing providers, philanthropy, city departments, people with lived experiences of being homeless or going through a period of homelessness, as well as representatives from hospital, behavioral health, academia, and public safety. All in all, this is not about me, but about that group of people, those frontline workers. You all delivered, and I'm pleased to announce today that we didn't just meet our goals, we beat our goals here in Baltimore. In 2022, Baltimore housed 1,443 households, and we are tracking over 2,500 units of affordable housing in various stages from concept to occupancy in our development pipeline. And if you want me to go back to the goals, we wanted to rehouse 1,000 and build 1,605 units. We rehoused 1,400, and we have 2,500 units in the pipeline. We can clap again for that. Notwithstanding the many communities across the country that joined the House America Initiative, I would like to highlight this administration in the city of Baltimore for doing what Baltimore always do, and that's leading by way of reaching and exceeding our goals. Indeed, this is a proud moment for all of those involved who have spent their time, efforts, and resources in building a community that cares for all Baltimoreans, but most importantly, it's a proud moment because we're able to help those who need it the most. And as Secretary Fudge always says, everyone deserves a safe, stable place to call home. The historic level of federal resources has fueled our efforts and our plans going forward. We are extremely grateful to President Biden and Vice President Harris and their entire administration for continuing to lead in the way that we haven't seen in our country, to make sure that we're investing in the people who have been forgotten and communities have been forgotten for far too long. And we're going to continue to work with them to make sure that that has a deep impact here in Baltimore. We established the parameters for the Rapid Resolution and Flex Fund, and we will kick off shelter diversion training this spring. We issued a RFP for rapid rehousing, and contracts have been approved by the BOE. We are in the process of enrolling households in that program, and we are creating a housing accelerator fund to help build and revitalize more affordable housing and grow our housing supply. This initiative is helping us to set the precedent here in Baltimore that when we set a goal, we not only can accomplish it, but we can absolutely beat it if we work together. And we have the honor of being rewarded with the meeting of our immediate needs of our residents right where they are and working with them to chart a successful path forward. I am grateful to HUD, all of our partners here today. Thank you again. I look forward to what the future holds for our partnership, but most importantly, what the future holds for our residents. But today, you will hear from someone next who will have the most powerful words that we will hear today. Someone who knows firsthand the significance of having a place to call home. I would like to pass it over to Renee Lau.
Good morning. And thank you, Mayor Scott, and each one of the agencies that have partnered into bringing these possibilities. I'm going to give you the abbreviated version of a long tale. 2 years ago, I became homeless because of my transition, because of a cancer surgery, because of the company I worked for went bankrupt. I happened to be talking to a counselor at Johns Hopkins Hospital, and they hooked me up with health care of the homeless. And the next thing you know, I'm not homeless anymore. Because Mayor Scott has rented motels around the city. I have a private room. I don't have to feel afraid and not safe. But from that room, because not Mayor Scott and the city of Baltimore and the commitment from you all to make sure that people are housed and the funding that you provided opened a big door. From there, I was able to start a Facebook campaign because there was no affordable housing for disabled or senior transgender people. And Aya Damon, the CEO of Baltimore Safe Haven, just followed me for a year as I'm living in this hotel down on Russell Street, right? And I unfortunately had to go back to the hospital. The health care for the homeless made sure I was taken care of medically. But I was getting ready to come out of the hospital. Aya calls me on the phone, and she says, I have a house, and you're my house manager. 2 months ago, I was named intern director of senior and disabled housing for Baltimore Safe Haven. But none of this could have happened. None of this could have happened had it not been for this gentleman here and each and every agency in this room that partners together. Mayor Scott has also made a commitment to the LGBT community. And part of that community is Baltimore Safe Haven. And I thank you all, and I cannot express my appreciation for lifting me from here to where right here. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Renee. And now we will hear from Commissioner Alice Kennedy.
Good morning, everyone. Today is an absolute fantastic day to be here with everyone. Mr. Mayor, Regional Director Heckles, Secretary Day, Director Augustin, Director Abrahams, Dan, everyone in this room, Mary, the entire team at DHCD, MOHS, and every agency that is making it possible for us to achieve our goals and exceed our goals that we stated earlier. It takes a village. And even more importantly, thank you so much, Renee. Thank you for sharing your experience with all of us here today in this room. This is such important work. And the work that we do as city officials, as government officials, as federal and state officials, and nonprofit organizations and our organizations, we come to this work for a reason, because we're all called for service. And it is in that service that we are here to help and support and to hear stories like the story that you shared with us today. And when we connect with those with the lived experience, it highlights this work so much more for all of us that are in this work today. It's that language, and it's the language of the heart that we can feel differently, that validates why we are here and why it is so important. And that can never be fully explained just in mere words, because it is so greater than the words that we're all here sharing. So I want to say thank you so much, and thank you for your work at Baltimore Safe Haven, and for the leadership role that you're taking there. It's such an important partner when we talk about sheltering and rehousing our most vulnerable citizens within the city. And being ensured that you're at the forefront of ensuring that all of the efforts that we're doing are inclusive of marginalized citizens within our city. It is this partnership that makes all of this work. And it takes all of us working together in this concentrated, concerted, and sustainable effort to successfully meet the need, achieve goals, but exceed them, like we've stated today. I want to thank everyone at DHCD, at all of our partners within city government, Mayor's Office of Homeless Services, to helping us meet that need and exceeding the goals for the new units that we have, new housing units that we have in the affordable housing pipeline. At this point in time, I believe in history, the partnership between the Department of Housing and Community Development and the Mayor's Office of Homeless Services is the strongest that has ever been in the history of this city. There is a fundamental understanding and agreement that we do need housing to solve our homeless crisis within the city. And it is broader than that. It is about building the sustainable communities that we have. I also want to take the time to recognize that we are also in the middle of Black History Month. And, we've been reflecting about quite a bit about history over the last couple of weeks of February, and we still have a couple more, and about the history of housing and equities across the city of Baltimore. And from the vantage point of representing the Baltimore City Department of Housing and Community Development, I am unapologetic in expressing that at the agency and under Mayor Scott's leadership, one of the foundational prescripts that we've embraced and that we understand is that equity in housing and community development must begin with the acknowledgement that the history of slavery and institutional racism is undeniably woven into the fabric of our present day conditions. And that the work that we are doing here is to address that. And how do we work to dismantle those systems? And how do we work to change that so that we're creating sustainable communities allocating resources where resources were not allocated previously? How are we creating opportunities for all? How are we lifting everyone up and leaving no one behind? We want to make sure that what we are doing today, and that the past does not define the future, that it doesn't define where we're going and what we're doing. The unprecedented resources that we have right now in the city of Baltimore, between our home allocation from HUD on our home ARP dollars, between the ARPA funding and the Housing Accelerator Fund that Mayor Scott mentioned, we are able to bring this important work of housing people and providing affordable housing in a way that we have not been able to do in recent years. And that energizes all of us that are doing this work, because we understand that there is no time, we don't have time to wait. This isn't something that we can sit on. We're taking advantage of every opportunity in front of us right now, right here, today, to address these issues. So all of the support of everyone in this room has steadied our path going forward. We can't do this without everyone that is here. And one of the largest partners that we have in this work is the state of Maryland. And with that, it is my honor and pleasure today to welcome the new Maryland Secretary of Housing, Jake Day. For those that aren't aware, Secretary Day served as the mayor of Salisbury for 2 terms. And under his leadership, Salisbury established a first-of-its-kind Housing First program to reduce chronic homelessness. So we know that we have a partner in the state that is fully aware of and understands the issues that we're here to talk about today. And with that, I'd like to introduce Secretary Day.
Well, Commissioner Kennedy, thank you. Mayor Scott, thank you for letting me be here today and join you. You know, as a former mayor, I am not used to coming in the first days in office and claiming victory over things. Mayors, we are at the ground floor, we're coming up with ideas, and then we get about the business of accomplishing them. So let me give credit where credit is due to the DHCD team, who has actually been the partner to Baltimore City. Danielle Meister and Stuart Campbell and Carol Gilbert, Gregory Hare, and the entire team. Matt, you as well, as a former DHCD employee. There is a huge team at DHCD who has been and will continue to be a partner to you here in the city. Mayors get to proclaim things, if you didn't know. And when they proclaim things, they become true. So a couple weeks ago, when Mayor Scott proclaimed that I get to wear the title of Mayor for Life, it's true. So I'm going to do it, and I'm going to wear that proudly. So thank you, Mayor. We have, over the last 3 weeks, my first 3 weeks on this job, gotten to see some incredible announcements and achievements here in Baltimore. The reopening of the new refurbished Lexington Market, your announcement of a major investment in affordable housing last week, Mayor, and then today. So Commissioner Kennedy and I were joking outside that every week needs to be like this. Let's keep the rhythm going. It is a good time to be all in for Baltimore. Look, I just want to add that, Mayor Scott leads boldly, but also compassionately. I'll never forget at Leith Walk Elementary and Middle School, a year or so ago, we were reading, and I can't remember the name of the book, but you read about being champions. Muhammad Ali book about becoming a champion. That would be a good champion to use as a role model. And, I'll never forget you reading to the young people in that school. And, that compassion for people is evident right here in this work that you're doing, Mayor. So, look, while working in Salisbury, I helped lead the creation of a permanent supportive housing program. If we were in church, Kevin, when you started a minute ago, you were preaching to the choir. We are at DHCD going to be committed. I've got a couple of values that we're going to be bringing to our work and a couple of objectives, and I'll just mention 2 of them briefly. One of them is that shelter is a human right, and that housing people first must be step one. It can't be the last step, but it's got to be step one. So I'm with you on that. And the second one I'll mention is that we must unwind the legacy of past decisions, past bad decisions. That legacy is inherent in places like Oliver. And that legacy has been cemented by policy decisions of the past. And if we're serious about returning to Maryland families, particularly Maryland black families who had a future once stolen from them, if we're serious about making that, we have to make deliberate policy decisions to counteract redlining and to counteract the construction of destructive highways and federal urban renewal dollars that were used to erase entire neighborhoods. And this is an example of that deliberate decision-making, putting money back into the neighborhoods that need it most. And I want to point out that it's all about partnership, that without the vision of Episcopal Housing Corporation, Sojourner Place wouldn't have been built. Without federal HUD vouchers, financial support from the state and the city, these apartments wouldn't be affordable. Without health care for the homeless and the Weinberg Foundation, Sojourner Place's residents wouldn't receive the important health and social services that will help them transition to a life of stability. And without the support and welcome of the Oliver community, none of it works. All these organizations, these people, and your missions come together cooperatively. So I can say congratulations to Baltimore City for your success. Congratulations to Mayor Scott for the new partnerships and measures that you've announced today. And I assure you that in DHCD and in the Moore-Miller administration, you've got a partner moving forward.
And in speaking of partnership, our success with House America goals would not have been possible without the Housing Authority of Baltimore City as a partner. HABC has been in the trenches with us. One of their core values is community and partnership, and they walk that talk every single day. So with that, I'd like to introduce my partner in this work, Janet Abrahams, Director of the Housing Authority.
Oh, wow. Thank you, everyone, and colleagues and members from the state. Matt, welcome back. Matt is our partner in crime. Of course, Mr. Mayor, and my partners on this side of the room. When I first moved here in 2017, Dan and Ken were the first two that came in my office. And I think they came in there with the idea that I was going to say no. They did, because they walked in gingerly and introduced themselves, and I was very proud to be part of the first program.
Sojourner at Argonne.
Yeah, there you go. That was the first one. And then when the second project came around, here they came again, and I'm like, you got it. What do you need? They needed 35 vouchers for this building. And those 35 vouchers for this building, ladies and gentlemen, helped them to close their deal and to make a financial commitment that the agency, the Housing Authority of Baltimore City, made to this building over the next 20 years, which equals to over $10 million that we have invested in this building. But we didn't stop there. I asked my team, Corliss and Shannon that's in the room, and Dan and Ken, and everybody knows when you talk about vouchers, you're talking about these two young ladies. Those are my partners in crime. And I have to say, I asked Corliss yesterday, I said, well, Corliss, how much are we spending overall at the Housing Authority on an annual basis on various homeless programs? The Housing Authority, we're spending $35 million a year on homeless programs here in Baltimore City. And in the last 5 years, we have spent over $175 million on homeless care in this city. And I want to, we entered into a partnership with the mayor's office back in 2007. And that partnership was to make sure that the Housing Authority is investing in the areas where it's needed most. And that is taking care of our homeless population. We are thankful for the wraparound services that comes from healthcare for the homeless. And again, we will continue to invest as we move through this process. When the emergency vouchers came out, we partnered with Irene and her team to make sure that we get the number of vouchers that we're currently putting out on the street. That's 278. The team gathered together. They worked hard to make sure that we're housing everyone that qualify under that program. So it's not just me, and I want to thank you because you brought tears to my eyes. In order to do good work, you have to love what you do. Steve Jobs said that, and I live by that every single day. And you brought tears to my eyes because you know what? Sometimes my team gets so discouraged, and I have to say to them, we're doing the work of the Lord, ladies and gentlemen. And so we're going to come in here every single day. We're going to leave all the sadness outside because I know it can be stressful. And I know the stories we hear is heart-wrenching. So thank you, because I know now why I do what I do. Thank you, and thank you all.
Thank you, Janet. It is my pleasure to introduce our final speaker and federal partner, Matthew Heckles. Matthew is the Regional Administrator for HUD's Mid-Atlantic region. Prior to being appointed to the position by President Joe Biden in February 2022, Matthew served as the Assistant Secretary and Director of the Community Development Administration at the Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. And usually I don't mind going last in the speaking order, but today I think that's a particularly difficult task. Thank you, everyone. So much has been said that I don't know what else I can add, but I will do my best. Tom and Kevin, I mean, this is a fantastic facility. This is a fantastic home for so many people. And it was a pleasure and an honor for me to be part of that early on conversation, and then to be back today and see it come to fruition is just amazing. And the people and the lives that are being changed here daily is why we do this. I'd like to introduce to those of you who don't know her, Stephanie Statz. She is new to HUD, newer than me even, and I'm the new guy. And she is the Baltimore Field Office Director, and so someone that you certainly want to know. Also, Joe Savage, thank you very much for being here from the U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness. You've been doing this work for a long time, and I know that it's the partnership at the federal level between the USICH and HUD that has made House America really work. And to the mayors, I work for one. Secretary Fudge was a mayor in Cleveland, or outside of Cleveland in Ohio, of course, and she brings that perspective to HUD. And I know that you will bring that perspective at the state level, and you do every day. And it's a perspective that I think is incredibly valuable for the work that we do, because mayors get to interact with people on a daily basis. They get to see, they get to plan, they get to do all of this really good stuff that at the federal level, as I have moved away from state work over the last year, it's hard, because at the state level, at the city level, that's where work really gets done. But it's the partnerships, right? So we are thrilled at HUD to be here today to congratulate the city on its work around House America. House America is a lot of things. It is a response to a pandemic that hit all of us. Every single person was touched by the COVID pandemic, but probably none were touched in a more substantial way, in a more threatening way than our most vulnerable citizens, people who are homeless. And that is why we responded with House America. It is an all hands on deck, an all level of government coordinated approach to make sure that we were providing services to those who were most at risk through the pandemic. We used American Recovery Rescue Plan funds to use $10 billion, $5 billion for new vouchers, 70,000 new vouchers across the country, and on the home program side, to build new permanent supportive housing for people in need. In September of 21, Secretary Fudge set the national goal to rehouse 100,000 individual households. And what we're announcing today, of course, here in Baltimore, is that Baltimore is one of many cities across the country that have achieved their House America goals. So congratulations again for that. And Renee, thank you. I think what you brought today is the personification of the potential that we are not achieving by not making sure that every person in this country has a home. The potential to serve their community, you can't do that when you're on the street. You've got to have a stable home. You've got to have a stable home to keep your job, to keep your health care in place, to make sure that you are a contributing member of this country and this society. And you are the potential that we still have to realize as we continue to house people across the country. And House America, to me, again, it's a program, it's an initiative, it's a partnership, it's a series of partnerships. It's also a call to action. We should be housing America. We should be housing every single person in this country because that is what people here deserve, and it's what we need to provide to them. So thank you again to the City of Baltimore and all of the partners here today for your incredibly hard work. I know how hard it is. I really do. And it takes commitment, it takes tenacity, it takes a certain amount of compassion and that grit that it takes to really get the job done. And you have done it here. I'm glad to hear that you have met your goals, that you have then set new goals, that you have met those goals. I hope you set new goals after that. And we will continue setting these new goals until the job is done and every person has a home. Thank you very much.
Moment. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks everybody here. I just wanted to mention that while all the units here are leased, we still have one that has yet to be occupied, apartment 415, and it's down the hall here. So if anybody would like to see the quality housing that's being provided, we would love to host you down there. So,
And please see it because they are all amazing. Questions, anybody? Lisa?
What, you all had a lot to say, so, we only have a certain amount of time to tell the story. What is the status of homelessness in Baltimore? What is it? Because people are constantly coming up to us saying, I don't have a place to live. We drive past people in tents and sleeping on the streets. What is the reality here?
I think, quite simply, the reality is, Lisa, that in Baltimore and in the United States, we have not created communities in the wealthiest country in the history of the world where no one should have to experience homelessness. We have not created a community, a country, a culture, an environment, an economy that does not leave people behind. What we are doing here, what you hear us talking about today, is us doing just that. Not just thinking about it, as you heard Kevin say earlier, about just services, right? But how we deal with people in their entirety, starting with the premise that having a stable place to rest your head is a right. And this is not something that's going to end overnight because it is not something that was created overnight. And this is why this is so important and why we set those goals, and then set more goals when we beat those goals, right? Because we know how consistently we have to do. But when you're talking about homelessness, it can't be simplified because it's not simple, right? Some folks become homeless because they lost their job. Some folks have behavioral health issues that we have to work with. Some folks have substance abuse. Some folks are generations of their families have struggled because they lived in West Baltimore where a neighborhood was redlined and a highway was never built, and the neighborhood was disinvested and it just went down and down and down, or the jobs that their family once moved to the city that were working are gone. There is no way to simplify it, but what you can simplify is that Baltimore now has a coordinated response, understanding every single aspect of what causes our neighbors to experience homelessness, and we're working together to solve that. Irene, you want to add anything?
I think also the important thing to note is that we're bringing all sectors together. It isn't we can't continue to live in a society of have and have-nots, but we have to have a community that includes everyone, and we work with everyone to ensure that if they're in some sort of state of crisis, that they could get connected to services the first time. And that's what we strive for as service providers, as government, as anyone in this sector, and we'll continue to work to figure that out. I'm a social worker by education, and for me, if I can't understand our system, how do I expect someone living in crisis to? And so everyone's coming to the table to figure this out. Like Mayor said, this was not something that happened overnight, but we can't continue to ignore it, and we have to address it now, and that's what our community is doing together.
Do you know how many homeless people there are in Baltimore City?
So according to our last point in time count, we have about 2,200, but as we work with our community and we're looking at data, and I would say data really is the foundation to this, we want to do more than just get a snapshot of how many people are experiencing homelessness. We are working with Community Solutions through Built for Zero to look at our active numbers. How many people are coming into our system? How many people are outflowing to permanent housing destinations? That's the level of data that we should be looking at as a community and what we are committed to in 2023 to be doing. We are going to start that this year to monitor our progress towards active reductions in homelessness.
What about that goal as far as the 2,500? I mean, should it be half? I mean, if it's 2,200 right now, you want to reduce it by 25% by 2023. Should you shoot higher than that, 25%?
That's part of diving into the data. Like I said, that 2,200 goal is a snapshot. HUD requires that during the last 10 days of January that we go out and we count people that are both sheltered and unsheltered. Where Baltimore is taking the extra step is that we're trying to get to real-time data. And so to say, at a snapshot, should it be a reduction from here to here? It actually should be, we should have greater people outflowing from our system than inflowing into our system, which is a lot more precise. But we'll also add to the goal of USICH, because if you get your reduction numbers down, of course it's going to affect your point in time count as time goes on.
Hi, I'm Sophie Haskell with the Baltimore Banner. I'm wondering how the people who have been housed through Rehouse America so far were prioritized or selected, and how that's going to change, if at all, going forward, and if there are certain populations that you think have been better or less served by this particular program in terms of the types of homeless populations that you're working with.
Sure. So like humans, we need a diversity of interventions. Some of it are going to be an intense intervention like permanent supportive housing, where rental assistance is going to be provided long-term with the support services there as needed. Some need just a little bit of help. And so as we roll out diversion and rapid resolution training, roll out the Flex Fund, someone may just need a little boost up, and that's all they need to get out of homelessness. And so we want to ensure that as we look at resources, and it's not just getting as much money in as we can, it's the strategic use of those resources. We want to meet people where they're at, so if they need just a little bit of support or long-term support, we have that within our community.
Was there a specific sort of way that people were prioritized for, the 1,000 plus people who have been rehoused through Rehouse America?
So in terms of prioritization, when it comes to our HUD resources of permanent supportive housing and rapid rehousing, we work with our continuum of care to be able to prioritize those resources because they're the most intensive resources that we have. But anyone that's looking for services, we really want to meet them where they're at. So I would say that our community needs a diversity of resources. As we see what is more successful over time, it helps us to strategically use those resources where they're at. And if we see our reductions start to go in a different way, then it gives our ability for our homelessness response system to pivot to meet the needs of the humans. A system can't be static. It has to be dynamic, and I think that's the important thing that I want to impress upon. And I know one day way in the future, I want a system in Baltimore that's able to meet the needs of people, and that might survive me and the mayors, but something that the community will work together to make sure that anyone that is faced with a housing crisis can be served within this community.
Irene, a point of clarity first. The 2,200, is that the most recent point in time count? The one just a few weeks ago?
No, we do not release those numbers until May when we submit those to HUD.
Are there any early indicators of the most recent point in time count? Maybe not a hard number, but anything that sticks out to you?
At this point, I can't because we have to go over and make sure that we're not duplicating numbers. So there's a lot of work that goes into that. So I really don't want to comment on what the numbers look like for this year.
So follow up, anything specific to Baltimore that is the biggest challenge at the moment, I believe for Matthew as well, is there a common thread besides a lot of money that the communities that have had success share in this initiative?
I think it's the coordination. I think it's the dedicated leadership in cities and across levels of government coordination and action. We have weekly calls with all of the House America jurisdictions around the country, and there's a lot of peer-to-peer sharing that happens on those calls because this is complicated work and things are different in different parts of the country. But at the end of the day, there are a lot of solutions that can be developed in one area that can be shared in other areas. We are not working alone in Baltimore on this, or in Philadelphia, or any place across the country. We are working together to make sure that this is a national response and that it's implemented at the ground level. And so those coordination calls are really, really important and really, really productive. We have a number of examples of things that work that have been implemented then in other cities around the country because of the coordination at the federal level under this House America initiative. But I think that's one of the key things, right, is that it takes housing, it takes healthcare, it takes education, it takes all of these different parts of government sort of laterally and then vertically to get the job done.
And did Baltimore have any unique challenges?
I think, Paul, two things. One, you tried to get Irene to get in trouble when Matt was right there. That's a good try. She's too good for that. But I think that you know very well the challenges. It's not just here in Baltimore, but cities like Baltimore across the country. We all facing the same things, right? We know Baltimore may be the birthplace of redlining, but we weren't the last, right? In fact, the very street that we're sitting on is named after the gentleman that did it, for now at least. Hint, hint. But when you think about that kind of disinvestment, when you think about even what we've been through over the last couple of years where people's lives were devastated by the pandemic, right? Everything is different. And when you're talking about cities like Baltimore, communities like here, but also I think when you think about the country writ large, we forget about people who live in rural areas that were hit hard by changing ways of the world as well. But the substance abuse, the behavioral health, the poverty and the concentrated poverty for us, we all know all of those things always play a part. Mackenzie, it's your turn.
Mine are unrelated.
Well, no one's surprised by that, Mackenzie, but speak now because I have to leave right after.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, we have been reporting on the 23 schools in the city that had 0 students who are proficient in math, and we were wondering, how do you defend those results, and do you believe that there should be a change in leadership at city schools?
Well, I think a couple of things on that, Mackenzie. The reality is, despite you guys' inability to say it, that city schools, like school districts across these United States of America, have been experiencing decreases in math results between 2019 and 2022. So it's extremely disingenuous to talk about that without acknowledging the real true picture. You guys are choosing to focus on a data point from that recent assessment instead of telling the full story. And the full story is that when you're looking at ELA, looking at city schools, actually seeing increases on the NCAP from pre-pandemic outcomes. But it is true, like the entire state of Maryland, the district math scores dropped from pre-pandemic levels. But that's no surprise to anybody. This is what we should be talking about here. We knew that this would happen. This is why you saw me clamoring for us to get our young people back in the schools, because we already knew. When you live in a neighborhood like East Baltimore, where your family is living in a neighborhood that was on purpose disinvested in. Your school system was disinvested in on purpose. We cannot gloss over the historical and the realities of what's happening here. And even with all that to be said, the district's rate of change in both math and ELA from 2019 were better than the state of Maryland, resulting in us closing the gap in 7 out of 14 tested grades and subjects. But that's not what you guys are talking about. It's undeniable that students, especially those who were already struggling before the pandemic, were going to see a gap, right? Because we know the challenges that we have here. They didn't have their teachers who would go above and beyond. Their parents are working 2 and 3 jobs. They were struggling to get internet. Think about all the things that we had to do to get our young people to have some semblance of education. And I think the New York Times pointed out that nationally, the math results were going to be devastating. There's a lot of work to be done in city schools, and they know that. But that work is not just on city schools alone. That's on all of us to do that for our young people. Everybody that says they cares about young people in the city of Baltimore should be stepping up to help. But what I would also like to see from you guys is, when we're talking about a list of 24 schools, let's run a story every night for 6 months and boost it on Facebook and spin ads about the countless amount of young people from Baltimore City schools that are getting accepted into college and getting $40,000 and $50,000 of scholarships. Let's run that on the news all night long. Let's talk about what these young people are doing. Because while we have a long way to go here, we know that we're not going to get there overnight, but there are so many young people that are doing tremendous stuff in city schools each and every day. Those teachers, those staff, those principals bust their butts each and every day, and I will not continue to allow them to be used as fodder for political right-wing gangs to do whatever folks want to do. Because we have to tell the complete story when we're talking about what's happening in our schools. Can they be better? Yes. Will they be better? Yes. Will I push them to do that? Yes. But what I will not do is sit here and act like it's one person's fault, or it's just a teacher's fault or a principal's fault, when everything that happened in that young person's lives and in their parents' life before they were born has something to do with what's going on with them. And since you guys didn't ask, I just want to point out something else, because we haven't talked about this in a while. Homicides in the city of Baltimore are down by 33%. Non-fatal shootings in the city of Baltimore are down 30%. Robberies are down 8%, and carjackings are down 31%. Thank you. Mackenzie? Yes, ma'am.
I understand what you're saying about your view is not telling the full picture about these results. But the reality is that 2,000 students aren't testing proficient in math in their grade level.
I understand.
That's the
You're
statistic,
right.
And when you're looking at the test scores in Baltimore County, the city is doing worse when it comes to the math test scores. That's the reality in Baltimore City, and if you say this was predictable, then why wasn't anything done to ensure these students didn't test this poorly?
I'll just say, Mackenzie, that in my response, I already gave you a response, right? And again, you comparing to one, I said the state, jurisdictions across the state, and how city schools have made progress. And they did a lot of work, right? When you talk about teachers physically taking laptops to kids' homes, when you talk about rec centers opening up so that children can learn in pods together, all that work was done for these young people. But what you all are trying to do is simplify something into, we could have did something right then to work with these young people. This work is going to be continual, and that's what we have to do, because we're talking about a system of young people that need a lot of help. And I would add again, until very, very recently, a system that was being underfunded by $300 million a year. Thank you, everybody.